Hi, everybody, and welcome along to the new edition of Paddock P by IRC, where we look at the Italian Grand Prix from yesterday. Joining me are Adil Chinoy, Maranellobaby, and as usual, BaBa.G as well. Hi, guys, how are we doing?
Exceptional after yesterday's race.
Please,
Okay.
you can only get so much erect.
Off to a great start already.
I know the hardest I've ever been was after Hamilton got the stop go penalty. I think that was my peak, literally speaking.
Okay.
I've seen
All right.
that graphic of Hamilton going down from P1 to P20 with this pit box, the car going through the pit wall. It was so satisfying watching him go down to P20.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's begin. I'm sure we'll cover all of it,
Yes.
and a lot of personal feelings, even though we have begun with a lot of personal feelings already, and a bit more. All right. Takeaways from yesterday. Let's start with you, Baba, this time.
War of attrition turned to game of luck, I guess.
War
It
of
was one of,
attrition.
yeah, it
How?
was it was one of the most luckiest races you can have, I guess, in terms of who ended up on the podium.
When you
Because we
say
had,
attrition, are you talking about retirements? Because there was only, I think, 4 or 5.
yeah, I thought I felt so because in
Okay.
terms in terms of what I was talking more about the luck aspect.
Okay.
How Gasly, in terms of you need exactly everything to happen according to how it happened for him to be in that place, and science
Right.
got probably robbed.
Right. Robbed. Okay.
Yep.
Some strong words. Would you agree with that, Mara?
Uh, yeah. I think I'm not gonna agree or disagree. I'm just gonna give you my a high level race review. We'll get into the driver specific stuff eventually, but I think that this race, if I had to sum it up into one sentence, made a very very strong case for reverse grids. That is my takeaway from yesterday's race, and if I think given the characteristics of a few top running cars, really their their chinks in their armor really showed yesterday.
True. We did hear the commentators mention that quite a few times yesterday, making a case for reverse grid Sunday race, sort of a qualifying race on Saturdays and so on.
Exactly.
Okay,
Um,
well, my personal sort of summary or takeaway from the race was conflicting views about how I first felt about the race initially, as in super bored to super exciting, in almost just a few minutes. But yeah, that was it.
I think it showed that Formula One has the potential to be one of the most interesting sports in the world, and for me, probably the most interesting sport in the world. However, it also has shown that without significant um, interruption from the FIA, it's not going to happen. And I think it is a combination of your um, good and bad. Of course, Formula One is exciting sport, but ideally, I'm hoping 2022 regs will give us the racing like much more racing like we saw yesterday.
Mm. True. Well,
Exactly.
2020 regulations are all about making the car ahead easier to follow,
Yeah, and there are a few
mostly.
teams on the grid which have experience with things like ground effect. So hope like teams like Renault, teams like Ferrari, teams like McLaren. So we should see them get enough of a run on Mercedes. I know Mercedes is definitely going to be a strong contender, but let's not get into 2022 regs. Let's have a separate podcast about that.
No. Just one thing I want to mention. Now that you spoke about, cars being easier to follow, I think the one car that is just not the best at following another car because they're probably not used to following another car are Mercedes with their heating issues.
I think I think they were running a larger rear wing, coming down to Monza, they were running a larger rear wing, and I think uh, seeing them get mugged on the straights, seeing them struggle to overtake, was a result of that. And they ran aggressive cooling to compensate for that larger rear wing. So I think that really for the screwed Bottas's race. I'm not sure if this is going to be a recurring issue, but I think the aggressive setup on that Mercedes in terms of cooling to minimize drag was what we saw yesterday.
Mm. I don't fully agree. I think that has been a recurring issue for the last several years actually now at Mercedes.
True.
Anyway, I'm hoping that is the case, and so maybe we have a slight change in who leads
Well, that is
who
the issue
leads
with
the
most longer
championships.
wheelbase cars, and Mercedes I think has the longest wheelbase on the grid.
Correct.
So maybe I think there are a lot of contributing factors to this, but yeah, certainly I think there's a very strong argument that Toto Wolff made to remove the reverse grid. To veto the reverse grid vote. I just realized
Yeah.
veto and vote are anagrams of each other. Coincidence? Anyway. But yeah, I think he was completely aware of the decision, and I think it's clear why he didn't want reverse grid now.
Okay. Well, coming back to yesterday's race, but just running off the thing about Mercedes and cooling issues and engine heating up. Did anyone of you see what Mercedes were doing when the red flags were out
As in?
to their cars?
Yes. I was
They had the rule books out and they were looking at what parts can be changed and amended and played around with.
Yep.
And what that resulted in was they checked from the rules that they were able to get some of the covering from the engine itself just out of the car, just panels, in the name of changing panels, so that the engine could be cooled down. Just so that they could remove panels covering the engine to cool the engine down.
That was interesting. I genuinely thought that it was more to do with changing the cooling itself, because I'm not sure whether the cooling extent of the car can fall under the um, the what do you call it? I'm not sure whether it will fall under the park Fermi regulations. I'm not really sure. So I thought they were modifying that, but evidently, BlackSheep, you're right. It probably was just the panels.
Just too much power for once.
Yeah, and I think party mode affected Mercedes. The lack of party mode affected Mercedes more than we all thought
Yeah.
it would.
Yeah, dude. And I think some of our community members were like, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change anything. If at all, it did change massively a few things. I don't know.
Exactly.
Maybe it's just the Monza, the track layout itself here. I guess you need to know in Mugello or some other track if it's actually affected or not. I mean, Red Bull seemed like they're having a rough time.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think with Red Bull, it's more to do with their setup itself.
I think, given the fact that Mercedes have so much grip, they need that extra power. But I think they're going to learn from this and probably not be so complacent about their setups in future. I'm not saying they were complacent. I'm pretty sure that they expected to be out in front and pulling away. But they didn't prepare for contingencies. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
the tire compounds between Spa and Monza are the same, and
Pretty much.
Red Bull was performing quite decent in terms of max in Spa. How could they not replicate it here?
Well,
Pretty
Spa
sure.
has the middle sector where Red Bull can make massive gains compared to other teams.
You could argue the same about
Whereas,
Monza.
Yeah, but Red Bull.
well, not to that extent.
Red Bull
Not
was
to
not
that
gaining
extent.
time on only car that was fastest in the middle sector was the Mercedes. Rest were all evidently quite close to each other. They were quite fast in the straights too. I don't know what went wrong here in Monza. I think it is partly the engine modes, I feel a bit. But yeah, setup could also be weird. Horner
Yeah,
keeps mentioning the car is tricky. Yeah,
one
please.
key thing that I noticed was Williams. Remember the last time we spoke, and we spoke about these quali modes, and then we've also spoken about how Williams are good during qualifying and not able to replicate that during races. Do you
Yep.
think it's a coincidence that as soon as the quali modes are out, Williams were qualifying 19th and 20th consistently.
Yeah.
It is a shame that quali modes are out for.
And I did ask this question to you last time, that taking that away, will that affect Mercedes customer teams? And evidently, yes.
So I'm gonna be very blunt, and I'm gonna tell you guys where I was ungratefully biased. So until 2018, I used to say Mercedes was all brute, no grace about their car development. They just had the engine power, and which is why they were winning championships. Ferrari had the better engine, the better chassis, but I think that I think that Formula One with closer engines is probably a far more graceful sport. I'm not saying there should be a huge engine advantage like Ferrari had in 2019. I would love it if Ferrari got that advantage back, but it's not good for the sport either. You you wouldn't like the fact in a normal scenario if there was a McLaren and a Renault. I'm gonna uh last year and in terms of how close they were I mean how close Hamilton was on Leclerc. They definitely would have got past, but I think that
Mm.
the engine battle is becoming too prevalent in Formula One. It needs to be a little more closer together. I see FI moving in the right direction, but
I agree.
and hopefully that will have less of an effect on teams like on customer teams or non-works teams who are at the mercy of the works development.
True.
Makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
The-
Now that you say that, I think about it. I think aero is a very strong point of Mercedes, and I think with 2022 regulations bringing cars much more closer together on the aero side, coupled with this, this rule about engine modes, etc. I think they are in the long term moving in the right direction.
True. I agree. Ground effect is going to be fun.
It is
Yep.
gonna be fun, but I think that um, it's not gonna remove. It is gonna reduce the effect of dirty air, but I think we'll see a very different characteristic to the way dirty air affects the cars.
Absolutely.
There are
Yeah.
some conspiracy theories about the fact that it may not actually, it will actually affect the cars in or not to this extent, but probably to about 60% of this.
The
And I think that's more than enough with DRS, with less with DRS and
Mhm.
slightly closer engines. I think that'll make the sport way more interesting. But anyway, let's move on to the race. I think that's a great segue into seeing how some of the other customer teams have done. But
Yeah. Let's
at
bring up the standings, not standings, but race results. Let's start with that. Sorry to interrupt, but go ahead.
no, exactly, and I think that's a great. I thought we'd be starting with a customer team, but couldn't be further from it. Dead last is the Ferrari of Sebastian Vettel.
The one thing, sorry, the one thing before this podcast I was thinking about was, at least this time we'll just get the Ferraris out of the way so that we just don't have any more pain to go over.
Yep, he had a brake failure. Nothing more to say about him. It's a shame that it happened to the Ferrari in their home race. Um, Nothing much to say about Vettel for me. Average quali, not enough race time to show. Anything you'd like to add, Baba or BlackSheep?
Not much, except that he almost GTA'd out of the circuit. It was so lucky that he lost the brakes at P1 and not the Parabolica.
I thought he was doing I thought he was doing the real life equivalent of rage quitting from a lobby, but turns out his brake failed. But okay.
I'd like this guy has lost all additional hope that he had, so he just is going through the bollards.
That's exactly what I thought first. He just does not care at all. Anyway, the only thing I'm going to mention with regards to Ferrari in general is that the whole thing began with, okay, their engine is not powerful enough this year, and performance they're very down on. But now it just seems like they've fallen into that circle of, never-ending circle loop of what do you call it, negativity or whatever. Where one thing affects the other and just turns more and more, just goes further down south.
Exactly.
And at Monza, it just looks like just more things going wrong, brakes failing, especially with Charles Leclerc. I have no idea how his car can just behave in that way at the exit of Parabolica. I've never seen like anything like that before. A car behaving like that, and just it's not like there was a massive mistake made by the driver in any way. It was just the car just losing it completely by itself.
Exactly.
Um,
And just to add to one point, I mean, a direct Leclerc comparison from 2019 to 2020, at the exit of Parabolica is where he showed to be much stronger than Hamilton in a car which had better rear grip last year.
yeah.
So
Well,
if he's in a predictable car, even if it's a bad car, I'm pretty sure
yeah.
that would not have happened. The problem is this Ferrari dances around the circuit like a literal prancing horse. uh, I'm pretty sure that 90% of the drivers on the grid would not make that mistake, let alone Charles Leclerc.
Do you
And
mean to say prancing horse or prancing arse?
Both.
both. This year's Ferrari
Right.
is a prancing ass.
Go ahead.
Fair enough. Good analogy, but yeah. That I mean, it's I don't know what Ferrari are doing. I think they need a fresh start. It's either going to be a 2021 with a better engine, which is going to give them that extra firepower to think
Yeah.
about, both in terms of motivation and in terms of horsepower, or prancing horsepower, and or if it's going to be 2022 with a completely new revamp of the entire regulations. We don't know what could rejuvenate
Yeah.
them. I'm hoping it's next year, but worst case scenario, we could see them come back in 2022.
Well, they do have all the money they need and all the personnel they need, and I'm pretty sure it's not going to take too much for them to bounce back. I mean, it's not really a cause of concern, as in they're not going down the path of a team like Williams, for example, where they don't have the resources in order to build something.
Exactly.
The only thing I was going to ask you, the way Leclerc's car behaved out of Parabolica, was that, do you think, anything to do with how severely low wings they were running
I'm sure it was a
at the
contributing
rear?
factor. But this actually has to do with the Ferrari engine, not the chassis or the aero. This year's and Ferrari engines in general are not supposed to be easy on the drivers. Mercedes right now is considered the benchmark for traction in
Mhm.
on the grid, and that really shows by how consistent the Mercedes customer teams as well as the works teams, how consistent they are able to be on the throttle. Ferrari are the direct opposite, and their engines are known to be much harder to drive. So a combination of that with the lower rear wing, with the unpredictable aero, everything kind of sort of coupled. And let's face it, Leclerc may have made a mistake, but
Yep.
But I'm not going to put 100% of the blame on him because I think the car had a lot to contribute to that.
Even compounding to all that, he was also on the hards, and that was his first lap, I think, on the hards. I
Second,
guess
yeah. But
could
it's still
be.
tough. That's another. So I think all the stars aligned for him to spin out. Yeah. So I don't want to start off with Ferrari any longer. It's just
Before we move on,
depressing.
we are missing the driver of the day. Listen,
Kevin Magnussen.
smart and capable.
I want to talk about him ahead of Pierre
Just
Gasly.
to be a retard.
I was actually saving him to talk ahead of Pierre Gasly because I think, for me, driver of the day, like you said, Kevin Magnussen, the only man who could stop Hamilton this year. So GG.
Yeah.
Even when he's smart, he
It
manages
looks
to be
like
retarded, dude.
he's
He
got
parked the
two.
car.
Sorry, I was going to say it looks like he's got two strategies in his pocket. It's either take the other person out or take yourself out.
Let's not forget Haas did this to Mercedes in Australia 2018 as well. So maybe it was
Yes.
in the stars. They would not let a Mercedes win at Monza this year.
That man manages to never ceases to amaze me, dude. He parked it safely and still managed to fuck the race up. What a legend, dude.
I cannot understand why they couldn't just. Was there just not enough space between the barriers there? Why
Protocols,
did they
just
just kill?
protocols.
Why
It's
couldn't they
too
just pull the
close to
car
the track.
back?
because
High
he,
speed
because
corner,
they
they just
couldn't
can't
they
take the
couldn't
risk.
they couldn't bring the the staff onto that area of the
They
track
could they bring the crane.
without putting them in some component of danger. So they'll only bring the people out onto track when there's absolutely no chance of anything happening to them. Considering it was
Hmm.
just on the pit lane entry and it is a narrow pit lane entry, it could become, and that too on the exit of one of the fastest corners on the circuit. So I think it was the right decision to close the pit lane. All said and done, I'm not just saying that because Hamilton got screwed over, but I think it was the right decision to close the pit lane.
Okay, yeah, cool.
The
Let's
right
move
decision
on.
from Kevin to stop right outside the pits.
Moving on to
Yeah,
Max. I moving on to Max. Oh, so sorry. I was
yeah.
I didn't see much of him the entire race. He had a bad start. He went off track of it. I think Max never takes the chicane at turn 1 and 2 after the start. I think last year he did the same thing.
And then I think last year he just came in with too much speed and then just completely missed it.
And
Otherwise, he would have crashed
he did
into
lose his
somebody
front
ahead
wing
of him.
last. He did lose his front wing turn 1 last. It was a graze, but he lost his front wing last year. Um,
Yeah. Did he
yeah,
make some contact with a few people this race?
I mean it's Max. I wouldn't be surprised, but not that I saw. Hit the
No,
cam.
Albon certainly did at the race start, I think. I'm not sure if
Yeah,
Max did.
Albon tried to go on the outside of Gasly,
Yeah.
and there was a huge issue, and like Albon got some damage, had to cut T1. But Verstappen, I guess, just wasn't his weekend in terms of the car. He said he did retire with power problems later on, post red flags. So I guess that could have been an issue earlier on.
Well, I think
He-
Verstappen will be glad he retired with power issues because he would not have liked to finish the race outside the points on merit.
yeah.
Could be. Yeah,
I
sure.
mean, he didn't do it on purpose, I'm sure, but I'm pretty sure he'd be happy to DNF than finish out of the points.
Yeah, he was nowhere close even at the start of the race. I don't
Exactly.
think he was below Bottas, I guess, still.
Both
Before
Alpha
the Red Bull.
Tauris were actually quicker than both Red Bulls in the
Yeah.
in race
Yeah,
training.
and I have a theory for that, I think. I think it's because of Red Bull chassis. It's way too much designed to be running on tracks, like Hungary and the tracks that suit Red Bull. I mean, it's so evident when you look at the Red Bull how the rear ride height is so high compared to the front. And that's not the case with AlphaTauri.
That is true.
It's a much more sort of balanced car for all circuits, whereas Red Bull usually focus on, okay, this is the focus we have in our design, and we're going to stick to, we can let go of several circuits here and there and lose them and not win them. On the other hand, if we can score much better points at tracks we are stronger at, so let's make use of that. I think that is one of their rationales, I guess.
Yeah, I guess fair play to them. Yeah, that's them being realistic, and you can't argue that because let's face it, this was the luckiest win, the flukest of the races. I don't
Yeah.
think we'll get this again. So Red Bull definitely are aiming for the wins they can get on the calendar, and
And
fair play to them.
it's understandable, It's like, would you like the Red Bull to be fifth or sixth at every track, or would you like the Red Bull to, be seventh and eighth at like 3 or 4 tracks, but then beat the Mercedes and Ferrari at another 10?
Yeah, sure, exactly. That's what we need. That's what they need.
Yeah.
It works out. But
Exactly.
all in all, this is hindsight, but let's not forget that this would be the prime race for Verstappen to catch up to Hamilton in the WTC
It would have
standings.
been, yeah, but
Yeah,
then, I mean, nobody would have known what was
yeah,
coming.
yeah, exactly. So see, he just kept his head down. He could have probably closed the gap, but yeah, we never know.
I know I'm a Ferrari fan, but I'm glad that non Mercedes, Red Bull, or Ferrari were not on the podium. I
Oh,
think
of
that
course, I think everybody was.
I think
Yeah.
that it was a great race for the sport, and there was not a single person, be it a Hamilton, a Vettel, a Leclerc,
Mhm.
nobody was disappointed with the result yesterday. Maybe Lando Norris a
Yep.
little bit because, given his teammate was seconds ahead of him every single lap, not every single lap, but over the course of the race. But he did finish ahead of a Mercedes. He overtook the Mercedes at turn 1, but we'll get to
Yep.
Lando Norris later. Moving on to Antonio Giovinazzi.
Okay. Can I just
Um,
say one thing about him straight away? Hamilton dived into the pits, I think about 30 or 40 seconds after it was announced that the pit lane was closed, and it's understandable that they weren't prepared or they didn't pay attention to the fact that the pit lane was closed. Giovinazzi took his stop a full minute after Hamilton came out of the pits. That's a good minute and a half that Alfa Romeo sat there and didn't notice every car ahead of them not going into the pits and somehow deciding that it's a good idea to just go and out of the pits.
Sorry
They
to sound like
probably-
a feminist.
I mean,
but
at least in Mercedes's case, I mean, Hamilton didn't have anybody ahead of him, right? So it's not like he could take a cue from the cars ahead and what they were doing.
Exactly. It was the dumbest thing I've seen in Formula One since Ferrari strategy. They probably, apart
Yeah.
from the engines length,
Dude. Excuse me.
I have a theory
Hey, that's my
that
theory.
half
That's
the
my
Ferrari
theory.
team retired, and then they thought that let's go and help the B team.
It's stealing my lines.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Okay, the next person
Important.
I'd like to talk about. I mean, there's no talk about Giovinazzi. His race was ruined the moment he entered the pit lane.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
I've got to say he was running up there with. I mean, he was alongside Kimi for most part.
he
Before
was only
that,
alongside
I think.
Kimi for the most part because he pitted earlier.
We'll get
Did
to
he?
Kimi later. Kimi. No.
My
Let's
point
not
is,
talk about Kimi.
Giovinazzi made up that position because he pitted before the other cars. He would not have been in that position otherwise.
No, dude, Kimi was one of the first people to pit.
I'm not talking about Kimi. You're talking about Giovinazzi, right?
Yeah, Giovinazzi pitted under
Giovinazzi-
safety car
Yeah, I'm saying
when.
and Giovinazzi was up there. You're saying close to Kimi, right?
Yeah, before that.
It was below Leclerc and below Vettel.
Just
I
go,
think.
just so go up and scroll and click on pit stop summary. There you go. So Kimi was the fourth person to pit during lap 18, and
Yep,
lap
yep.
20 is when Giovinazzi pitted. So up until lap 18, he was running alongside Kimi Raikkonen before any one of them had taken any pit stops.
Ah, yes, you're right.
That's what I mean.
Well,
Was he though? I remember seeing Leclerc behind Kimi. That's about it. And Giovinazzi was probably further down below them. And Kimi had
No,
a
so
good
I think
3-second gap to Leclerc.
I think Leclerc was between the two alphas. I think
Okay.
at the race start through Cover Grande, I saw Kimi fighting Leclerc, and right behind them was, I think, Giovinazzi. Anyway,
Okay.
not much to say about him.
Yeah. Mr. G is about to lose a seat.
yes.
Let's
The
move on
next-
to
the next driver is
who
Oh
is,
my
should
God.
lose
no,
a
no.
seat
One second.
Come on.
But
immediately.
the next driver, BaBa, is not allowed to talk about. It's going to be between BlackSheep and me. I'm sorry,
Dude,
audience.
he's P15, dude. You suck his D on regards of his racecraft, and that guy just tries to do a 3 wide into T1.
Can I just tell you, he beat his teammate. So there it is. There you
The
go.
great Max
Fair.
Verstappen was beaten by Alexander Albon. Come on, Alexander the Great, proven.
Yes. It's not like there
Okay.
was a certain Williams above the Albon.
Okay, I've got to say, okay, BaBa, you're not allowed to speak. I agree. Albon had massive damage to his floor. Massive
Dude,
damage.
might as well give
And at-
Magnussen the seat. At
Dude.
this point.
Listen, the way that car is designed, any damage to the chassis or anything wrong with the aero, that car is not going to work. We know that.
He has the steering wheel. He's controlling the pedals. What are you guys?
No,
high
he
on?
was punted. Don't you remember? Lando Norris got the penalty.
Yeah, true. But even he had T1 incident also, which has ruined his wing.
No, he didn't have any wing damage at turn 1.
He did. The
No,
Alpha
he
Tauri
took-
didn't get damage. But
He escaped. Dude, they bumped wheels. That's it. There was no wing contact at the front.
there most definitely was. I remember seeing.
It was Alex's rear right bouncing over Gasly's front left. That was it. There was no damage to the wing.
Okay.
However,
Yeah.
he
Yes.
finished in P15, and I think, look, let's be honest. The grid. I'm sorry to say this. While it was an interesting race, the grid did not reflect some of the talent levels of all drivers. So I'm gonna say one more thing about Albon. He just had all the racing gods against him. You've seen him come through the pack numerous times without picking up so much as a scratch on his car, apart from the dust particles maybe on the nose, but
True.
or the overheated brakes, or because he does tend to do Ricardo
Yeah.
moves. But Albon has come through the pack on every single occasion he's had a bad qualifying, which is most races.
Yeah,
Uh,
Baba, let's remind you that the issue he's had this year that you have moaned yourself most about is the fact that he doesn't do well in qualifying. Even you have accepted that he's got great race pace and he seems to come through the pack and make it to the towards the
No,
front.
And also,
no.
Baba,
He
one more
makes
thing.
it to P6. P6 is not the front of the pack in 2020, by the way. It's P4. That is his
No, but when
benchmark.
you're coming from dead
It's,
last or towards the back, that's pretty impressive.
Okay, but
And the fact that he's
it
coming
is
from
not.
the
The
back,
car is so much stronger. It fights against Mercedes. How is it even remotely close to
guys,
being what do you call merit like or full
no,
let's
awe-inspiring?
let's please accept the
we are
fact that
forgetting a
Red
key
Bull in no
aspect.
way fights against the Mercedes.
We're forgetting a key aspect. Albon does not have the same parts as Max Verstappen, as said by Helmut Marko. He is he is running a handicap car. For all we know, his car may actually be slower in quali than possibly the Alpha Tauris as well, than a lot of other cars.
I'm looking at Q3 timings. Uh, Pierre Gasly versus Albon, 800ths of a second.
Right.
Very amazed. What a driver.
Let's move on. We're not going to get anywhere with this.
Beaten by
Uh,
Stroll.
George
we've
Russell.
got 25 minutes left. Yeah, George Russell.
Yes. Actually,
I was okay. So as you mentioned earlier, the finishing charts are not really representative of where the drivers should be or what their skill level is. But he was having a good race. I think he was constantly fighting, and it's quite refreshing to see the Williams is not just behind, 10 seconds behind a train of all cars, but it's at least up there fighting at the back of the grid with some of the cars.
True, I agree with you that the lots of people that drove a good race were just shafted by the situation.
I
And
remember this. I
Russell
remember
was one
this.
of them.
I remember this bit. I think one of the laps where Russell had DRS on Leclerc, and he pulled around to the inside of the main straight, and he was looking to dive down the inside. And I was just like, when was the last time you saw a Williams get DRS and try to get the move on a Ferrari?
True. That was like unreal, to be honest.
and may I note, without party mode.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to
That's
move on
that's
to.
assuming that Ferrari has a party mode, but sure, okay.
They don't have any modes. They don't even have after party, dead party modes.
They have yes mode. Do you have engine? Yes.
No, that's
Talking
just
about
no.
the biggest party animal on the grid, Kimi Raikkonen. Uh, he
Amazing drive, dude. He was the leading Ferrari for the most of the race
yeah,
easily.
easily.
Imagine being
Yeah,
3 seconds up on the factory Ferrari in Leclerc.
He
I
was
mean,
the
come
Alpha
on,
Ferrari.
what a god, what a god.
Can I just say one thing? For the last 3 races at Monza, one thing I'm always supremely impressed by is Kimi Raikkonen's racecraft. You see a lot of people going down chicanes and trying to make moves and defend with each other. There's always some sort of pushing and shoving and a little bit of contact here and there, or people just losing the braking point, going through the escape route and whatever. Every time there's a driver next to Kimi Raikkonen going into turn 1 and 2, it's pitch perfect. It's like you can see like a gap of an inch between 2 cars, and it just looks beautiful. The amount of space he just leaves.
Exactly.
His racecraft is perfect.
And he is a trademark driver of what F1 should be in terms of racing. And I'm sorry
Yep.
to say this, we have various FIA rules about the car needs to be n number of inches or millimeters ahead in order to have their right to a corner and all of that bullshit. But Kimi is old school in that sense. If a car is alongside you to even the nearest
Yeah.
inch, he will leave you sufficient room because he knows that you will go for the move. And what gave
Yep.
Sainz the confidence to actually go for that move was the fact that he was overtaking Kimi Raikkonen around the outside of turn 1, and it's not just room left by Kimi. People know the kind of driver he is and give him back the same amount of respect. And
Absolutely.
that is a sign of a great wheel to wheel race. And Kimi has always been that since his days at McLaren.
I'm just getting memories of 2018 Monza when Kimi led the race, and I mean he lost out at the end, but it was just lap after lap, close battle between him and Hamilton. That was just fantastic to see.
Talking about overtaking,
They were just trading places.
the day I became a Kimi Raikkonen fan was in 2005, I think 2005 or 6 Suzuka in his overtake on Giancarlo Fisichella.
Of course.
That
Yes.
was the moment I became a Kimi Raikkonen fan.
There's a glorious overtake on the outside of T1. That's a mad overtake. To
Yeah.
be honest, that's unreal.
Yeah,
Talk,
but
talking about his race,
yeah,
so I think Kimi was on for a points finish for the first time this season if the red flags didn't come in and situation didn't unfold, because he was prime in his strategy and where he was placed himself. But since the race situation unfolded this way, they actually didn't have a fresh pair of mediums. So they couldn't actually put any different tire on. So they put them on the softs, and it just showed that the car is just a rickshaw, and he just got overtaken by everyone. Every
Yeah.
every
I w-
single one within a milliseconds of the restart. So it was very
yeah.
disheartening to see. I was sitting thinking, podium Kimi, podium Kimi. And then it came to please points Kimi.
I don't understand why they didn't put him on hards. I mean, they put Hamilton on hards at the restart.
I mean, if you have three wheels, I don't think you can put hards on.
But how do you expect someone to do 50% race? It was exactly 50% race, right? It was lap 26 or 27 that we restarted out of 53. To expect someone to go 50% of the race on soft tires, I'm sorry, that's just again that's half the that, I know why, because by that time Leclerc had retired, so that's probably his side of the garage going there and helping
Yeah.
Kimi Raikkonen's garage.
That's exactly the point. They're like, why I feel useless right now. Better walk over to my cousin's place.
Okay.
Dude, literally, eh, what the hell, man? He got overtaken by Grosjean, dude, by the end. This was a joke.
yeah.
Is
They
that
should
Yep.
they should just take that engine from the beautiful Alfa Romeo Giulia, put it into the car instead of using the Ferrari engine.
You do realize the
Ooh.
Giulia engine is manufactured at a Ferrari factory.
Yeah, it's not
Right.
officially confirmed. But it's a V6 version
Yes.
of the
It
V8
is pretty much a
California.
Ferrari
Yeah,
engine.
pretty
Yeah.
much. But you know what I mean. But anyway,
Yeah.
Ferrari make good road car engines. Let's not take that away from them, please.
I'm going to
So
move on to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead if you still
one
have.
last second, yeah. So
Yeah.
about the tire choice, Stroll did 24 laps on softs, and if Stroll can do 24 laps on softs, I'm betting that Kimi can
That
do
is
24.
not true because the 2019 Mercedes was built with one thing in mind, which is tire conservation, and we can assume that the 2020 Racing Point picked up a few characteristics from that car. So that stands to logic that Stroll had the potential to go that distance, and Kimi could not.
Yeah, but Kimi is usually known to control the softer compounds quite easily. It's known even this season we are seeing whether there was a time to shine in terms of tire management, especially the softer compounds. He came through, and to be honest, he didn't lose out much on the basis of the tire. It was mostly on the basis of the package
Yeah.
itself. So
A driver cannot outdrive a car, and that car is not good on its tires. The Alpha's been weak on its tires all season.
Yeah.
true. Okay.
Let's
Um,
swiftly move forward. I'm conscious of the time that we have.
Grosjean
I'm excited. I'm excited to move forward to the highest finishing Ferrari engine driver, Romain
in
Grosjean.
P12, yes.
Yeah,
Easy.
I think there was nothing wrong he did. I think he had a pretty good race.
Yeah. He himself said like my race is pointless. It's all PR. Even though he was P20 to P12, I think. Grosjean
It was
was
very
that
good.
last.
It was very good to see him so happy for Pierre Gasly as a fellow Frenchman at the end of the race.
Yeah, it certainly was. He's a nice guy. Not saying I find him a bit whiny on the radio, but I think that's just because he's French. Nothing against him. I'm joking, guys. I'm really joking. But anyway, Grosjean had a very quiet race. I really don't even remember seeing him around. Couldn't really make any overtakes with that Ferrari engine or with that Haas car. So, yeah, finishing behind the Williams is probably accurate.
Hmm.
The Tiffy though. Yeah.
Decent race by him. Again, got lucky.
This is the second time he's been P11 this season, by the way.
And is it the first time he's beaten George Russell?
No,
Yes,
second time.
Well, that wasn't really beating because
Yeah,
in the
it's a
first
DNF.
Austrian
It was a
Grand Prix, Russell retired.
Yep.
First time he's beaten George Russell. Change
Yep,
of
yep.
power shift at Williams coming soon. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah.
On to Sergio Perez. I want to spend more time.
One thing I want to mention about Williams is change in management from next race. yeah, so look forward to seeing how they evolve further.
Yeah, no more DB. Let's move on to Sergio Perez.
Yep.
Perez, poor, got
I think got
shafted.
very unlucky. Yeah, very unlucky with the timing of the safety car and closing of the pit lane, red flag, etc. He was looking for a podium easily. He was, I mean, at one point he was fighting Bottas on lap 1. I think it was P4 after that, wasn't he? After behind Lando Norris,
Yes,
P4 or
yes,
P5.
was
He
behind
overtook
Lando.
Bottas, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, he was done with Bottas on second Lasma in the first lap.
Yeah, of course. In fact, let's just take a look at the race start while we talk about Perez. So, but regarding Sergio Perez, I think that I have to say that even on pace, I think Stroll was equal to or probably quicker than him in the race
Mhm.
itself. Um, so Perez was driving well. I think he always drives well. He's a very experienced driver, so the gap between his low and his high is very small.
Yep.
And I think that's the main difference between Perez and Stroll. And um, I'm glad to see both Racing Point drivers actually being two capable drivers being there in the Racing Point. And this is the second time this season Stroll has jumped onto a podium. Or is it the first?
First time.
First time.
He was
Sorry.
First time.
P4, I guess, multiple times.
P4 in
It's
Hungary,
not-
yes. But
Yep.
Stroll is turning out to be the more opportunistic one, and that's something Perez has been known for all his career.
Let's keep it fair here. Stroll is the only driver who literally did not have a pit stop this race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
He was
And
the
he was
luckiest
running,
of the
and
lot.
he was running like P8 or P9 before that, or P7 or P8 or something like that.
He qualified
was-
way
he
below
was-
Perez. It was
Yep,
like
he
what?
was just about teetering at the edge of the points all the race throughout before that. So yeah, he got massively lucky. I wouldn't really give it to him for this race. I think he just got lucky, and a lot of drivers did have a few choice words for him, that they shouldn't be allowed. The fact that drivers they're allowed to change tires during red flag, but
Yeah.
it is what
I
it
think
is.
somebody should take a screenshot, two sets of tires with 0 pit stops, and
Yep.
that could probably become a meme.
Yeah, but how did Norris not pass Stroll? Even they had a great start, so I don't think if Stroll was this bad. He would have pulled away from Norris, given how Sainz was driving that McLaren.
Did Norris pass? I thought Stroll overtook Norris at one point towards the end of the race. Was that not the case?
No, Stroll was. They never changed positions. It was
There was
P1
just
Hamilton, P2 Gasly, P3 Sainz, P4 Stroll, and then Hamilton pit for the stop and go.
Oh yeah, the two McLarens were big losers, isn't it? Due to
Yes.
not the first safety car.
exactly,
So
yeah.
I think they came out P6 and P7. Yes. So they did make their way up after that with the McLarens.
Exactly, yeah. I completely agree with you. I think McLarens were probably, in terms of quality to race pace, they were hands down for me. Oops, my phone just fell, but sorry about that. They were hands down for me the
Second best car.
the best car in race trim.
Oh, okay.
After the Mercedes,
Yes.
and probably better than Mercedes, given that they had set their car up to overtake as well. But in terms of quality to race transition, they were certainly the strongest car on the grid. They were faster than the AlphaTauri. Fine racing gods are with Gasly, and as they
Yep.
and just they go with you, they are against you sometimes. But not saying Gasly doesn't deserve it. But Sainz, the way he drove, I mean, we'll get to Sainz, but I think since you're on to Norris already, the McLaren was extremely impressive. They were just as Renault were strong in Spa. That was the McLaren of Monza, probably a little better, in fact.
Well, we know the Renault power unit is pretty quick in a straight line.
Yeah.
We saw that with Renault themselves at Spa, and yeah, certainly with McLaren Monza.
Yeah, but really though, because McLaren Norris didn't end up passing Stroll. I would say it was more of a Sainz's field day. Like he was in the zone, but still they couldn't even close the gap to AlphaTauri. I don't think the advantage was that huge that they were performing that well. The quali was.
Well, I think the advantage was there, but it wasn't as significant. Obviously, it's not like what you have between Mercedes and Red Bull at the moment. Obviously, that's not what you're going to get in the midfield.
Yeah. Let's
It's gonna
actually
be much
talk
closer.
about the battle at the front. I think a little later. I think, will want to focus on Sainz and Gasly and that particular battle. probably a bit later.
Mhm.
Why don't we just finish up with the likes of Kvyat, Ocon, who had relatively quiet races?
Yeah, I
Um,
don't think they did anything wrong. Kvyat got slightly shafted by strategy because he started on the hard tires and then he got hampered by Gasly, I think, for about 2 to 3 laps. When the commentators were also mentioning that, we're surprised why they're not switching the drivers because Kvyat is certainly on a completely different strategy.
exactly.
Which is what led to Gasly then coming in finally for the early pit stop.
And Kvyat was performing quite well over the weekend. He was showing
Yeah,
this was good. I think this was going to be the weekend where he would have beaten Gasly, I guess, for
let's not
once.
forget they both qualified P10, P11, so we're not very far off from each other on pace. And Kvyat started P11, finished P9, so I mean, Gasly did get lucky with that. He held his nerve towards the end, but Kvyat just wasn't the luckier one.
Yeah.
Completely agree. Racing, and yeah, I think um, I am looking at the grid in front of Kvyat, and I don't think that he was quicker than any of the drivers in front of him. I think P9 is about where he should have finished on,
Yep.
even without any incidents or any red flags or whatever it is.
I agree.
Yeah, but he beat Perez. You think he's a better driver than Perez?
You're gonna have a
We
few.
know the
Okay,
we
let me.
know the finishing order is not really representative of where the
Yeah.
cars and drivers are. We've
Okay,
been over that.
that's a good
You
loop
know,
we've entered.
if that's what you're
Yeah.
saying, then Nicholas Latifi finished about 6 positions above George Russell. So
Anyway, anything
leave
that
that.
doesn't fit the narrative of this race is not representative of the actual performance. Okay, fine. Let's talk about the other French prick.
Well, same old, same old. I think it's
Okay.
very much like Kvyat, not very far off from his teammate, but just not to that extent on pace. But again, nothing wrong that he did. Just a decent, lonely kind of race for him.
So the
Not much he
gap
could have done.
between Ricardo and Mr. France is way too huge to be considered just an off day.
And
I
I
don't.
don't think that's all to do with Ricardo, if I may say so. Ricardo is a better driver, there's no doubting it. But let's not forget,
Okay.
Bottas was being held up by Norris, who in turn was pulling Ricardo along for a majority of this last stint.
Okay.
Ricardo
One.
and
What's stopping Ocon to stay with Ricardo?
Okay, I'll tell you what. Okay, so Ocon, Kvyat, and Lando Norris, all 3 drivers that we've spoken about that were not close to their teammates, they were double stacked during the safety car pit stop. Remember? And they all lost positions and time
Not
because
Kvyat.
they were. Did Kvyat not? Well, he must have lost
but
time because
okay,
you can't
so
have a 2-second stop for both your cars. It's
No,
not
but
like.
Gasly pit before. He didn't pit when the safety car came in. Don't you remember? He was pitted before, and he was out on track, maintaining track position.
but coming back to Ocon, Baba, I think the reason
Ocon
Ocon,
certainly was double stacked. I remember.
Yeah, Ocon was double stack.
it's got
So was
nothing to
And
do
so
with
Norris.
the
was
double
Norris.
stack.
Yes.
He was stuck behind Kvyat, who's not the quickest driver on the grid, and the AlphaTauri is not the quickest car either. So Ocon was stuck behind Kvyat and had to overtake Kvyat, which is why he lost the delta already to Ricardo, Bottas, Norris.
Okay, fair. That can be the reason. I agree. That's one. Let's talk about this dude with 7 points. Who is this dude?
Okay, I don't think there's any disagreement here. It is what it is. I heard that Mercedes made a colossal blunder that somebody back at the factory at Brackley finally went through the logs of the stewards and pointed out that there was a message that pit lane entry is closed after the fact that the pit stop was already taken.
Yeah, we saw Hamilton running to the steward's room. Like, what? Not P1?
How
3?
can you give me a penalty? It's me, your fellow British. No, I'm
It's a me, Mario.
Yeah. I'm also very amused by the fact that a lot of drivers and commentators and people post the race, even Will Buxton and a lot of guys I've heard saying, "Oh, there was not a red light at the pit lane entry." But I'm sorry, that wouldn't have changed anything. It's not like when you're at the line, crossing the pit lane line into the pit lane, you notice, there's a there's a red light. Let me just turn around and get back onto the track. You're
It,
not going to do that.
Yeah, they
that's what
probably
other
need to
people are
improve
saying.
visibility of that red light, though. I think they should.
Whatever they say, the driver always is in unison with the pit wall. So if they tell him to box, irrespective of what he sees around him, he's going to box.
Yeah,
And
true.
in that case, the entire parabolica was flashing him with red lights while coming in. So if he's that blessed and woke man, he would have just went ahead. But apparently that's not the case.
It's a
And
combination of team and driver error. But do you think the
Yeah.
10-second stop go was harsh or was it justified?
I
No, it
was
was justified. Purely justified.
justified, dude. I was literally getting pissed because I saw Giovinazzi come up and like stop and
Yes.
go, and I'm like, dude, is this man not going to get a stop and go? Giovinazzi literally pitted later than him, and he's got the stop and go earlier. And
I
then
was
I'm like,
genuinely, yeah.
yeah,
I
I'm
was
getting
boiling.
furious. I'm like, please, dude, give this guy. And finally they said, yeah. Then the radio message came up that Hamilton is asking his pit wall that am I getting a penalty, and they said yes, and then like, yay, let's go, it's on,
Yeah.
and then it's
Well,
fine.
I
deserved,
think that
yeah.
there was more deliberation in Hamilton's case because, as I mentioned earlier, Giovinazzi pitted a good minute and a half after the pit lane was closed. Everybody ahead of him passed the pit lane without jumping in, and for some reason they decided to pit him.
I
That was
guess
just a
they thought
blatant.
they
That
were
was an
just
easy one.
they just thought they were being a little too intelligent. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, in Hamilton's case, probably it required a bit more deliberation because he was the car ahead. It was only just a few seconds after they'd
A-
announced that the pit lane was closed.
And he was in the last sector, so he thought like my continuous luck string of success of lucky timings is hit me
Okay.
once again. I'm in the last sector and the safety car's out. I'm just about to jump in, and then you know what? Every dog has his day.
It just
Yeah, I don't
shows.
think any not one person, I guess, complained.
Okay,
Would
so
have
before
complained
we
about that.
completely destroy him, the number 44, let's just give him a shout out for his P22 P7, I guess.
Yep, yep,
Even
absolutely.
though you guys won't shout this out, but you will clearly suck on Albon's D when he does the same thing.
No,
Okay.
no, no, no.
Are you comparing
I
the Mercedes to the Red Bull? And that
It's
too.
literally
And
the
one
same
second,
up till
one
Renault.
second, one
It's
second, one second,
literally
one
the
second.
Monza.
same up
Baba,
to
no, no,
Renault,
you.
dude.
That's it. That's it. One second. You have
Yes.
you're bitching about Albon when Hamilton. Sorry, who did that with party mode, and Hamilton did that without party mode in a car that was struggling on cooling. Albon is a good driver. There's no doubting it. What he did is equal to what Hamilton's been doing. But the fact of the matter is that Hamilton is in a car which is a second faster, has so much more grip, which can be probably right on the gearbox of the car behind, because even with dirty air, they're still probably faster through the goddamn corners than Red Bull with in clean air. So what Albon's had to go through is not even 50% or probably deserves more credit than Hamilton. I'm not saying what he did yesterday wasn't anything short of amazing, but Albon should get the credit if Hamilton gets it as well.
I'm
But
saying it's easy for
also,
both of them, dude. I'm not
no,
saying that
no,
one guy is some god or something. These cars are literally overpowered up until the top three. Like there's no one challenging them, Red Bull and Mercedes. So it doesn't matter how many they overtake in a line. If the race distance is long enough, they'll go up to P minus five also. They'll
Yeah.
keep going above P1 also. That's not the point. It's the thing is that the race distance. It's about these very flashy P20 to P6s when clearly he's just turning down the AI to 20 and then having a field day.
you need to get some sleep, man.
No, but that was a good analogy by Baba. I
Yeah,
have to agree with
true,
him.
true.
Yeah, moving on to Daniel Ricciardo, probably the person who should be in the Mercedes seat. Um,
Yes.
I think he drove a decent enough race. He, like Perez, was on for a podium before the red flags screwed him over. Censor,
Yep,
guys. So
yep,
no.
yep.
But either way, he was on for podium. Renault was quick in a straight line. I think he did. Did he overtake Bottas as well at one point of time? Or?
Yes, he did. Yep, just before Ascari,
Ascari.
turning into Ascari.
Yes, you're right. So
Yeah.
it's a shame that Bottas got back through, because I'd have liked to see a battle between the two friends of Norris and Ricardo. That would have been quite fun to watch.
Yeah, Bottas jumped
I'm
him purely in the pits due to a wheel gun issue, I think, or the wheel issue in Ricardo's pit stop.
Exactly,
yeah,
yeah. Bottas jumped
yeah.
both Norris and sorry, was it Norris and
Yeah, it was Norris and Ricardo. Norris and
Norris and Ricardo?
Ricardo.
He jumped both of them.
Or it was Perez and Ricardo. I think it's Norris and Ricardo.
Yeah,
Because
yeah. Whatever it is, Bottas gained two positions in the pit lane. And I think that's a great segue to. I know we're short on time, and I really want to move to the top two. So moving on to Bottas, I think given fine, he jumped two people in the pit stops. Fine, he was stuck in dirty. Fine, he had cooling issues. But
Yeah.
how many more excuses are they going to make for him? He just, I mean, I heard a very famous quote by our very own BaBa.G earlier. You can literally bookmark the point where he signed his contract.
Yep.
Because the moment he did that, he just stopped. His performance went off a cliff. Is he actually fighting for world championships with Lewis Hamilton? Is that his mentality, or does he just want another contract?
Okay, so there's two things here. Let's not get carried away by emotions of bashing him. So I agree with the fact that he's obviously not up to that level in terms of consistency. And I was the one who said these things at the British Grand Prix, if you guys remember. And you guys were arguing that no, he was exchanging fastest laps and all this crap with Hamilton, and he's got the right to be up there and so on. And I was like, nah. Anyway, but this race specifically yesterday, he had a bit of shunt at the start of the race. I think he had some contact, and to him it felt like there was a puncture, but there was some slight damage to the side of the car, which affected the aero. And to him it felt like there was a puncture. So what he was doing through the second sector specifically was purposely go slow because he thought he genuinely had a puncture. In the post-race interview, he said that he felt how understeery the car was at the exit of the second Lesmo, and so he took it extremely cautiously, and that also explains why Ricciardo had the run on him on the exit of the second Lesmo and got past him at the entry of the Scari.
Right. I feel bad for him. And coming on to your issue in the British Grand Prix, I think he drove very well in the first part of the season. He made a few mistakes which caused Hamilton to come out on top. But my qualm with Ricardo is not that his performance dropped off after he signed his contract. He was good earlier. I'm not saying he. I don't agree with you that he wasn't good in Silverstone. I think he was very, very good earlier. He was trading fast laps. He was at least close or within a tenth or two of Hamilton's pace, and on a lot of laps even quicker than him, including quali. I think that he doesn't have the mentality, and he's taking up a slot or a seat, and the only other seat in the sport which can make the sport interesting right now. That is my
He was
problem with Valtteri Bottas at
he
this
was
point.
don't forget he was within a tenth of Hamilton in qualifying. So I don't know what you guys are building this up on, but yeah, he's definitely underperformed in the race. But I think that's just Monza for Bottas. It's not really his track, I guess. Even last year, he bottled an easy win against Leclerc. So let's not forget this is not a good track for him.
Fair enough. I think hopefully he can come back, but I'm pretty sure this was his race to really bite into the gap at Hamilton. I don't think it's going to happen anymore.
Yeah, this race was supposed to be his, to be
Yes.
honest.
Yeah, it would be the only consolation. The only reason I would not want that front three would be to see Bottas close that gap to Hamilton and possibly take the championship.
Yeah, it's fine. We can move on to the guy.
Moving on to Nando.
He was there, but not there at the same time, I guess. For the post lap one and first stint, I guess, and then he just vanished into thin air.
For
Just
all
was
those
there.
watching, while Baba talks, just watch Lando Norris start from P6 on the left hand side of your screen. Sorry, Baba, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the most amazing starts. He jumped, I guess, Bottas on T2, Cover Grande, I guess. Yeah.
T3.
T3. Okay, out into the first Lesmo.
Yes.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
I think it was before the De La Roja chicane.
Okay.
After Curve Grande, yes.
Okay.
Around the outside of Bottas, no less.
Yes, that was a brilliant move. It was pitch perfect. Seemed like McLaren's were going to run away, but turns out that Sainz was just so much quicker than Norris on this particular weekend. And it showed still a decent points finish for them. I think this is his highest point finish for Norris. No, he's got a podium. So
he's got a podium. I think this is.
I was taking it from last year.
It was a stable drive by him. It's just a shame given where he was running in P3 for a huge chunk of the race. He probably could have gotten the third spot on the podium, and I think we all would have loved to see that double McLaren up there.
I mean, we are spoiled this season, to be honest. McLaren P4 would be awestruck. I mean, amazing last year, but this year's quite spoiled us in terms of how it's going up and down. So yeah, I guess I'll take it.
So will I. BlackSheep, your views on Norris?
So
Yeah, I think BlackSheep
and
had a urgent matter to attend to, so he unfortunately would not be with us for the top three. And that's a shame. Getting onto the fun part of the grid. Um, just hold on 1 second.
I don't think. Okay, let me just start on Stroll once
Yes,
I'm
why
back.
don't you start? Why don't you start on Stroll while I'm just checking with him? Yeah, he BlackSheep did have to step away for an urgent matter, so we'll take away the top two.
Sure. So I don't agree with the hate Stroll was receiving. Even if he got the free pit stop, so did everyone else. And sure, he gained like a good 6 positions because of that. But that's just the name of the game of Sunday's race. Everyone who was lucky got lucky, and they made it work. The restart was a great start. So there's nothing much people could excuse themselves from, especially the likes of Norris, who could have probably caught on to Stroll and overtook him.
Yeah,
So I think Stroll, like in terms of Gasly, also, like I would say later, held his nerve and kept his position, which is also commendable.
exactly. I think Stroll, like I agree with you. I think he's a very, very good driver, and he's improving. He's going from strength to strength. It's just a matter of having the right resources, having the right backing, and having confidence in the car, which he does. So I'm really happy for him. He's going toe to toe with Sergio Perez, who's no slouch of a driver. So P3, good job, good on him.
Yep, agreed.
Now, as we look at that beautiful podium, Carlos Sainz and Pierre Gasly, let's talk about both of them side by side. First of all, Pierre Gasly, the first driver to win in Monza, I think since 1989. You can fact check me and leave in the comments if I'm wrong, but I think since Alain Prost won in 1989 at Monza, he's the first French winner at Monza, and this next French winner since Panis in 1996 or 1998. Which one was it, Baba?
96
96,
Monaco.
96 Monaco. So a monumentous day for the French. I know Leclerc is Monegasque, but I don't think that really counts.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think one more lap and Sainz would have had it.
I don't think so. I think the last lap Gasly was bringing it home. He had it. If suppose the race would have been longer, it's like mentality thing, bro. Like it's definitely was not just science closing the gap. It was more like Gasly just making sure he was doing everything right towards the last 2 laps and not making anything risky, not over this thing, outbreaking himself or not coming under pressure from the charging science behind. And I did feel that science in the way he was pushing, he was the longer the race went on, the more science would lose grip. So it was diminishing returns the longer it went.
But
So
there
that's
was
just
only
my
one lap
opinion.
left. There was only one lap left, and Sainz was within 4 tenths of Gasly coming across the line, and he nearly went for an overtake after being 7 tenths behind. That McLaren is a rocket in a straight line, or it has been all weekend. So I really feel it would be Sainz's race, and I would have loved to see it, considering he is a Ferrari driver next year. But at the same
Yeah,
time, it was nice to hear the Italian national anthem as a result of AlphaTauri being there. So, well, that's some consolation for me.
yeah. Pierre saved the lives of many Italians on Sunday. Let's not forget that. Like Don said once, I don't remember, friendship over Ferrari, AlphaTauri, new friend. They support AlphaTauri every time, everywhere. But yeah, Sainz drove a hell of a race. He didn't put a single step wrong the entire weekend, to be honest. And I can't, the way his face was there, I kind of felt gutted for him too, because that man game is everything.
And
And to
I think
be so close.
tend to get it taken away by Lady Luck ahead of a car and a driver who aren't as good as you is just gonna hurt that so much more, so much more.
Yeah. So it's still he's got 2 podiums in the last 2 years after being tossed around the grid in different teams each year. So I guess all these guys are moving up to a better graph. And
Yeah.
I was
Let's not
all
forget.
I can
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
all I can say is that the future of Formula One is going to be insane.
Completely agree
I
with you.
am gonna I can't wait for it.
Let's not forget, Sainz would be a Red Bull driver today if he didn't forcibly leave the team because he wasn't happy with the AlphaTauri performance. Oh, sorry, with the Toro Rosso performance. And at that point, Red Bull didn't have a slot with both Max and Ricardo being driving very well. if the stars had lined for him, he would have been with Red Bull at this point, and they would not be struggling for a second driver.
True. That would have been so easy, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Ferrari are reaping the benefits of that. Hopefully they can give him a car next year. Hopefully Gasly gets a car to compete with
Dude,
the top.
Gasly needs to get re-signed to Red Bull.
He
I
doesn't have
don't.
the mentality. He does not have the mentality to drive for a high pressure team. Simple as that.
I mean, that's you. You're assuming that people don't change and people are
He
just the
doesn't have the
same.
mentality just yet. He was performing very similarly last season when he got promoted. With that P4, I think in Bahrain was with the top cars finishing and on merit. That was exceptional by Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, exactly. The way Albon's not even been close to P4 or something like that. When there's
He
literally
got
just four. There's
Hamilton.
just
Hamilton screwed over Albon in the few races that he was on for a podium. I'm not going to take this away from Albon, but I think they're both very good drivers. I don't think the current Red Bull. I think the current Red Bull is too unpredictable for an inexperienced driver like Albon. And at the same time, I think the AlphaTauri is a very stable and predictable car, which is why Gasly has so much confidence to lean on it. But that being said, of the two, I still want to give a little more time to Albon because I think he's mentally better than Gasly. Gasly is, because of him being French or young or whatever it is, he is not up to the mark when it comes to driving for a high pressure team.
fair enough. Fair enough. I'll agree with the fact that he's probably can't deal with the pressure, but I will never agree that Albon's better than Gasly on terms of pure racecraft
You know,
and pace and whatever.
you never know.
Because I
We
just
may see Max move to Mercedes, and we can actually see Gasly and Albon go toe to toe in the Red Bull. We never know.
mm, yeah, that's a pipe dream, isn't it?
We can finally have it in front of us, Baba, who the better driver is.
Yeah. I mean, you can't convince me. Anyways, I have my eyes. I'm looking at that. I'm joking. Anyways, let's conclude this race. To
Yes,
be
I
honest,
think,
we
yeah.
wanted to make this short, but I guess this out of all the paddock races, this is I think the most merited to go longer than we decided because this was a monumental race, and I hope all of you enjoyed it like we did.
Yes,
I don't.
I certainly did, and thank you so much, all of you, for watching. It's been a pleasure. I think this is hands down the Grand Prix I've enjoyed talking about and enjoyed watching the most this season. We can only hope that this made a very valid case for reverse grid. FIA, if you're listening, thank you so much for bringing up the red flag. And I think the
And
reverse grid needs to happen. It absolutely needs to happen.
everyone remember the driver of the day is Magnussen. So
Yeah.
give your thoughts and prayers to him.
K-Mag, yes. I went from hating the guy to loving the guy in the span of one corner. So it just shows what Formula One can do to you, and I hope all of you on the edge on the edge of your seats like I was. Thank you so much. This has been Maranellobaby, Adil Chinoy, and BaBa.G. BlackSheep says goodbye. He just messaged me. He's okay. He's dealing with a personal issue. So we'll catch you guys next week after the 1,000th Grand Prix for Ferrari at Mugello. Let's hope that they can put in a performance worthy of the number.
All right, see you guys.